Welcome everyone to the IIBA South Africa's Career Path webinar. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I'm positive it will be absolutely worth it. Just a few house rules before we get started. If you could please stay on mute and keep your video off, that would be great, thank you. The presentation will be an hour long. You may post your questions in the chat and we will get to them, we'll post them to the speaker at the Q&A time at the end of the presentation. This presentation will be uploaded to the IIBA SA YouTube page and I'll put that link into the chat shortly. If you also want to join and become a member, if you're not already, I will also post the link to that in the chat. There's also an events page that you can have a look at to see any of our upcoming events, and I'll put that into the chat shortly as well. And if anyone wants to present, please get hold of me. That's my email address there, durban@southafrica.iiba.org, and I'll put that in the chat as well. So now that that's out of the way, let's introduce you very quickly to our speaker. Lucille Pillay has almost 20 years experience in the SDLC of IT projects across many different business domains, including fintech, manufacturing, and sales and distribution, just to name a few. Lucille will be sharing her journey from BA to business architect, as well as some skills needed to develop in the strategic role, as well as a look at what her typical workday is like. Lucille will be speaking for approximately 40 minutes, and then we will switch over to our Q&A, which should run for about 20 minutes. Over to you, Lucille.
Hi guys, just thank you so much. Before I start, I just want to thank the IIBA for having me here tonight and just allowing me to share my journey with you. And just to all of the attendees, for attending this webinar, thank you so much, guys. I prepared a little presentation which I would like to share with you guys tonight. So let me just do that and let me know if you guys can see my screen. Okay, just by raise of hands, are you guys able to see it? Okay, cool. Hey guys, so tonight I just want to actually, what I've done with the presentation is just divided it into 4 parts. So what I'll take with you guys tonight is just firstly my path to being, to actually becoming an architect. Then secondly, I would like to discuss my top 6 traits that I believe makes a great business architect. Then I would like to just go through a typical day in the life of an architect. And lastly, what is life like beyond architecture? So what are some of the roles that one can pursue after choosing the architecture path? So yeah, this is the first slide. And this is actually my 20 years of experience and actually the road that I took to becoming a business architect. As you can see, it's divided into 3 core disciplines. The first one being software engineering, followed by business analysis, and then eventually I took the business architect path. And what I would like to discuss with you today is what are some of the key roles that I've actually practiced in each of these disciplines and the types of tools and techniques that I use whilst I was in each of these disciplines and how they actually transform me through my path, and of course the training and education that really supported me in each of these disciplines. Now, I know that we have very enthusiastic BAs at this webinar tonight that have a keen interest in business architecture, but what I would first like to do is just to touch on my interest in science and technology. Now, as a kid, I was always fascinated with how stuff works, whether it's the production line of a factory. And, as a child growing up, having just understood how a chocolate factory would work, for me, I always focused on watching programs that showed you how stuff works. So I always had that curious mindset of how does things actually work? And even trying to grasp great technological innovations like using electricity to represent on-off signals, which then we used the binary number system, which laid the foundation of our modern information system. So things like that is actually what really fascinated me. And if any of you guys have read up on quantum computing, you would actually find that mind-blowing. But I thought that I'd leave that for another day. But that's the type of person I am. I'm very fascinated with how things work, whether it's technology and even just the economics of the world, how the world works, what is the mechanics of the world. So as you can see, I liked a lot of things, and just having a curious mindset, that was a very important asset to me. So what I did was I pursued a career in information technology. So a bachelor's degree in information technology was the path that I took. And during this degree, I excelled in the software engineering modules of this degree. And because I was pretty good at that, I thought, let me just make that my career choice. So software engineering is where I started. And as part of my software engineering discipline, I started off as a coder. So I was a programmer, and I started off using the almighty C language, which is, I would say, the actual foundation of the modern operating system today. MS-DOS was born out of the C language. And and over the years, I progressed to using other programming languages. But what really stood out for me was, the skill that I really specialized in was using PL SQL to interact with the Oracle database. And I used that to build business functionality. But the key was, I tried building it in a very smart way. When I mean smart, I always tried to optimize queries. And when I build business functionality, I try to look for commonality and how can we separate coding so that it can be reused. So I really got the grasp of software engineering principles, and that took me very far into an architecture route. So software engineering principles really guided me in that route. So as you can see, I then moved on to becoming a systems analyst. And in that role, I actually wrote technical specifications for developers and technical designs of front-end user interfaces, and also designing the database. And the entity relationship diagram, I have to admit, was the most important diagram in my software engineering discipline, because for me, the entity relationship diagram was the first view of an entire business. So it actually gave me the view of how information is stored and how is the business representing itself through its information. And just understanding how the business, what types of information a business is storing the data about, I quickly was able to get the full view of the business. And even when I moved to various organizations in my software engineering roles, the very first thing I would ask is, please gonna have a look at your entity relationship model, because it gave me a perspective before I actually went diving into building a business functionality. So as you can see, I always looked for the big picture before diving in to building specific features. So the ER diagram, I must admit, became a huge friend of mine. But then I began to ask, what was the origins of this data? Where did it come from? And the features that I'm now building, how is that transforming the data? What new data is coming out of it? And the features that I'm building, how is that being used on the ground? In my software career early on, I really had that view of how is my features that I'm building actually being used on the ground in the hands of the customer. I really wanted that view, but back then when I was a developer, developers who really had a customer-facing view. So what I did was I worked very closely with business analysts, and I began asking them a lot of questions. And eventually I spent time with analysts and went to customers with them. And that's where I got a good understanding of what is the customer really wanting, what is the business problem that we're trying to solve. And I then combined my programming together with my business analysis skills, and I took up a role in as an analyst programmer. But eventually my curiosity got the better of me, and I made the complete switch to a business analyst. And that ended my 7-year journey as a software engineer. But the principles of software engineering, that really stuck with me. And it played a huge part in my architectural path. So now moving on to business analysis. So what happened during my time as a business analyst? I knew that I came from a very technical background. My training was in information technology. I specialized in engineering, and I realized that I felt that I really had to learn a lot about business, and I was nowhere near there. So the more time I spent with users on the system, and the more I began understanding business processes and the roles different departments actually play in enabling business processes, that's where I began to get the grasp of how businesses operate. So I began scrutinizing business process maps, and I consulted with my fellow business analysts, and I asked them, what are some of the key questions that you guys ask customers in order to produce these business process flow diagrams? And they just said, just ask the who, where, what, when, and why. Those are the 5 key questions. And it took me to this very day, just by asking those 5 key questions, you can actually gain a lot in trying to understand the business. So BPMN became my new language, business process mapping notation, how to map business processes. And the BABOK became my Bible. I use these a lot for best practices when approaching business analysis. And I must say that being a business analyst really, really grew me as a person, because I was able to communicate with people from diverse backgrounds, cultures, countries, and at various levels in an organization. And I really, really treasured my travels within South Africa and neighboring countries like Malawi and Zambia. And what I believe is that by traveling and actually witnessing features experienced by customers on the ground, I got to understand that whatever we built in within South Africa locally, it may not necessarily work in other countries because of various different regulations. So I got a lot of experience by understanding the reception of new system features by customers on the ground. And business analysis also allowed me to train. It allowed me to present and to empower individuals. And training for me is one of my passions. So when I learn new things, I'm like very eager to train someone and mentor them in that. So business analysis really, really allowed me to train and empower individuals. And I actually, it contributed to me having improved customer experience by actually being on the ground. I worked as an implementation lead in many of the features that I built. I was responsible from the beginning all the way to being on site when these features were actually launched on the ground. So it improved change management, and it helped me improve the customer experience when I actually was able to witness how these features and this new system was being received on site. My love for product development only grew because there's no better way or no better feeling of solving world problems and seeing your solution in the hands of people. The BAs, I believe, play a very, very important role in every aspect of a customer journey. And I still get to work with the engineering team. So for me, being a business analyst, I still got to work with engineering. So it was a really major plus for me. And over the years, I have to say that my knowledge of enterprise ERP systems, that really grew. And as I got to know ERP systems better, I began to understand how different areas of the business fit with each other, how accounts receivable, accounts payables, your general ledger, sales distribution, how all of that actually fits with each other. And for me, mapping end-to-end views of systems at a very high level of abstraction just became a norm. And this really contributed to me taking up a business process owner role. And I was able to develop standard operating procedures of how business analysis was to be conducted within my organization. And what I actually found was, because I had this good understanding of ERP systems and being able to map businesses at a very wide end-to-end view, I used that as a training mechanisms whenever we had new BAs come on board, and even test analysts that are wanting to test aspects of the system. I found that when you first give BAs and test analysts a big picture of the system and then dive down to the nitty-gritty details, it actually brings more meaning to their work. And also it helps test analysts understand the impacts of various other areas of the systems and to actually improve their area of testing. So as you can see, I was practicing many elements of architecture without strictly having the title of business architect. But in my organization as a BA, what I began to realize is that the product actually began to grow more complex. And what we found was that we had multiple project teams working on multiple features. They had overlapping goals, overlapping functionality, and even the timeframes overlapped in which to launch. No BA that I spoke to actually understood the strategic direction of the business for whom we were developing these features. And the BAs were not really part of the steering committees. They had no view of future initiatives, and they weren't really, and even if they were aware of these initiatives, what impact would it really have? So that was a question for me. The BAs in my organizations, we generally took projects that arise from project portfolio management, who didn't really have a view on how projects would actually impact people, processes, and other system components. The BAs generally worked in silos, but they consulted other project teams just based on their limited knowledge. So I remember looking at these problems, and I remember when I read the BABOK, it did mention the strategic role of a business architect in addressing some of these problems. And that's where my research began in business architecture. So how did I then transition into business architecture, which is the last column of this presentation? So what I did was I first found a business need for architecture and then pursued it. I didn't really just say, oh, I want to be a business architect. I found a true need where it could actually benefit the organization. So I found it's almost like finding a gap in the market for a new business opportunity or a new feature that could benefit a customer. That is how I viewed business architecture. I saw it as a new capability with its own value proposition. But I first needed to understand everything that it entailed before I could actually practice it. That's when I came across the Open Group Architecture Framework, Togaf. This was developed in the Netherlands. It's a framework for developing enterprise architecture, of which business architecture is one of the 4 domains, the other 3 being data, applications, and technology. But I wanted a holistic view of all of the domains. So I went on to pursue my Togaf certification. I did this on my own. I didn't really consult too many people. I just needed to, for my personal development, and if I wanted to be able to bring value of architecture in the organization, I had to actually understand it myself. So I went on to get a certification in Togaf. And once I was certified, it actually grew the attention of the operations executive in my organization, who actually reimbursed me for the qualification. And she also assisted me in writing a business case to promote and introduce business architecture into the organization. But sadly, our customer did hit tough economic times, and they significantly reduced their IT budget. And at the time, business architecture was then just kept on the back burner. So it didn't really go very far at that point, but I still felt I needed to have strong business acumen before I could really become a business architect. So at the time, I was actually tossing between getting a CBAP qualification or pursuing an MBL, a Master's in Business Leadership. While the CBAP, I felt really strengthened my skills and techniques on how to do business analysis, which is what the BABOK is based on, I still felt that the MBL or even an MBA, it touched on every facet of business at a very strategic and executive level. It allowed me to understand how to run a business, how to develop strategy, how to develop business structures, how to acquire new businesses, how to develop business models, operating models, and how to lead. So when I tossed the decision between CBAP and an MBL, I certainly went for the MBL because business architecture, after all, is about executing strategy. So that's the path I took. So this year I will complete my MBL, and yeah, so at the end of the year I would have got that qualification. And what I can say is that I would highly recommend anyone pursuing an architect career move to, or even to get a leadership position in their organizations. I would highly recommend it, but it's obviously not absolutely necessary. But for me, it gives you a really broad and global understanding of business and the ecosystem in which it operates. It helps you better understand business executives and how do executives think? How do they come up with strategy? And to be of any value to senior leadership, you actually need to know how they think. And they are actually expecting business architects to not only be a tool for executing strategy, but help them with strategy itself. So the MBL for me, I would highly recommend it, but as I said, not a necessity. And whilst doing my MBL in the midst of the pandemic and the lockdown, I pursued business architect positions. And with a bit of luck, or should I say hard work, I always say the harder you work, the luckier you get. I was offered a business architect position at a company called Strategy Alliance. They are a management consulting company. They're based in the Netherlands, and they specialize in sustainable digital transformation and education. They actually share the same values as I do, which is to empower people through education and to develop sustainable solutions. So for me, just that education aspect, the first thing they asked me is, can you consult and can you train people? And when I looked at both, it's just two things that I really love doing, and they love the planet, and they look at sustainability in everything that they design, business models that they help develop, help companies develop. They always put sustainability into the mix. So this was, I thought, a really good company for me. So at the moment, my work is fully remote, but of course in the future it may become hybrid. And right now I am self-employed, And I work on assignments together with Strategy Alliance that pertain to business architecture. And also, I will be delivering courses in architecture, especially around Togaf. So if anyone wants Togaf training, and also Archimate. Archimate, just like BPMN, is a language, say a mapping notation specifically designed around mapping enterprise architecture. So in the future, I will be training on this, and I'm actually going to try and get a certification in Archimate and even a certified business architect, because right now I believe Togaf, although Togaf touches all domains of architecture, which is your business, your data, applications, and technology architectures. It doesn't specialize in any one of them, but the CBA, or Certified Business Architect, actually goes in depth into the business architecture domain itself. And of course, I use the BizBock, similar to the BABOK. The BizBock teaches you all of the tools and techniques that you would use in your business architecture capacity. So yeah, I'm going to pursue that next year for added credibility in this field. And yeah, so that was actually my path to becoming a business architect. Right now, yeah, what I'm going to take you through next is what are some of the key attributes I believe one should actually possess when, what would really make you a great architect. Now, there are a lot of attributes that I've come across the net, but for me, these are my top 6. It's no brainer that one needs to have big picture thinking and to have systems thinking if you want to do architecture. Because architects, what they do is try to reduce complexity. They try to make complex things less complex. They operate at a very higher level of abstraction. And I feel that business analysts, while we naturally are curious and we question everything and we go in depth into things at the very minute level, we now need to try and categorize functionality into broader categories and higher level of abstraction. And one might ask, why do we need to actually do this? And the reason is that, one, when you look at things from far away, you're actually able to discover new possibilities, new ways of actually approaching a business problem. If you're too much into the detail, you don't actually see the big picture. And if you want to be able to find impacts of certain initiatives, it's always good to have that big picture view and then find the areas that are problematic and then deep dive. I mean, you still use your analytical skills to go focus that into a more granular level of thinking. So big picture thinking is absolutely necessary if you want to pursue or be a great architect. And of course, systems thinking. You know, business analysts are great at this, but right now you need to start thinking bigger, think bigger as in ecosystems. Businesses operate in a larger scheme of things, and now we've got to start looking at global strategy. Given if you're able to grasp ERP systems, how different modules work together as a whole, that's a great start. And if you enjoy economics, just understanding the economics of the country, you're already thinking in a system fashion. I think these 2 attributes are absolutely critical if you want to be an architect. Thirdly, being a business modeler. Now, business analysts already have brilliant skills at this, but business modeling in terms of architecture is a type of modeling where, like I've mentioned, is at a high level of abstraction. You're going to now try and map businesses in terms of capabilities. So when we talk about capabilities, what is this big trend about mapping businesses in terms of capabilities? Well, as technology is changing and businesses need to adapt, by understanding what your business is capable of doing, what it can do, you'll be able to know if you can actually adapt to that in the future or where it actually lacks. So understanding that big picture view and understanding how your business's products are actually delivering value to the customer, representing your business in terms of the value it delivers in the value stream, can give you that big picture view of a business. So there's a whole different type of techniques and maps and models that you need to use as a architect modeling, but that can easily be studied and practiced. The BizBook gives you those techniques, and I think the more you work and network with other business architects, you will just become better at it. So that's a no-brainer, and this can easily be learned. Strong business acumen, absolutely. So if you are experts at ERP systems, you already have a very good view of business as a whole. And if you're working in different roles in departments within your company, or if you have your own business, if you think about doing an MBA, I think any of those will give you strong business knowledge. As an architect, you're going to be responsible for even changing the business model of an organization, if that's what it comes down to, because some businesses are just sort of left in the past and not keeping up with technology, and you're going to be the one that's actually going to advise business on restructuring the entire organization, the departments, and so that's some of the things that architects work on. And of course, being an influencer. I always say that if you can influence the influencers in your company, that is a great start, because you'll always find there are companies where there are people that can really drive change. But if you can influence those people and get them to be on your side, then you can really drive change in your organization. And what I do find in business architecture is that we're always trying to convince management the benefits and the value of architecture. So don't go around saying, I want to do business architecture. Just find a problem, show the value, and that is the best way to start if you want to pursue a career in business architecture. And of course, strong leadership, because you're going to have to be leading the change in your organizations. Being strategic, that's the last one. Now, being able to develop strategies, one might think, okay, these are for the execs. It does take time and practice, but what I can say is that to have strategic thinking, it basically means coming up with plans to achieve goals. We can do that. It doesn't have to take an executive having to be at an executive level to be able to develop strategy. But I do think that the more time you spend with execs in the way they think, even strategists, read up on strategic management, you can actually better yourself in being able to think more strategically. And strategy is not something that is always planned. It can be a pattern of behavior that over time actually emerge into a strategy. So it's not something that you're always going to, this is what you're going to do and it's suddenly going to work. It changes. It's an evolving thing. And I think the more you spend time with senior managers, executives, and network, you will eventually be able to think much more strategically. Okay, so those are the top 6 attributes that I believe that makes a great architect. Right now, I want to take you through the day in life of an architect, a typical day in life of an architect. I have found this diagram from Macro Solutions because I thought it encapsulates beautifully what architects actually do. And the first thing to note is that business architects are not model makers. We don't go around all day just creating maps and modeling the business and documenting and drawing these massive diagrams. Business architecture is a means to an end. And the means is the actual architecture in terms of modeling the business, in terms of either its capabilities, value streams, an organization map, operating model. Those are the means. We use those models to be able to discover what the business is about, to explore the business. We then use those models to do analysis of what the future might look like for that business. And once we've done the discovering and analysis phase, this is the actual end result. And this is the value proposition, I would say, for a business architect, is that we can now start recommending solutions, recommending new ways of doing things, being able to transform your organizations, building the as-is business models, the to-be business models or business architecture states, developing roadmaps on how to transition into the new business architecture, and also using architecture to measure areas of the business, measure performance throughout your value stream. So being able to develop architecture and model it is just the means, and being able to actually recommend, transform, measure your business is where the value of architecture is. So this is what I do right now as an architect, building architecture models to be able to add these three types of value to organizations. And then lastly, life beyond architecture. I know a lot of people want to know, okay, so where do architects go after this? But what about business analysts? What if they don't want to become an architect? I mean, I just think that being a business analyst, you naturally have those analytical abilities. You have been in product development. You are great at consulting. And I just think that either moving on from an architect or even from a business analyst, you are an operations executive. So you could end up in various different roles. Chief operations officer, that's not too big, I believe, for an analyst, even a product manager, because we love product development. You might want to get into strategy, lead innovation in your organization. Maybe you've had more exposure in sales and marketing and want to actually expand your business, look for new avenues, new businesses to acquire. You could go into business development management, or you could be like me, a management consultant. So these are some of the roles that I thought would be perfect if one wants to move beyond an architect, or even straight from a business analyst. I don't believe you necessarily have to go architecture or to any of these roles, but these are just some of the roles that I thought. But like I said, there's no limit to your potential. And just to summarize, I just think that curiosity, I believe, and with lots and lots of practice and investing in education is really what got me here. Hey, thank you so much for listening to me tonight. I hope you guys have taken away something from this. And I just leave you with some questions now for me.
Thank you so much, Lucille. That was fantastic. I'm going to start with a comment, and I think this might be Edward. I like what I'm hearing. Lucille, you're talking my language. I think that was Edward. I'm just going to scroll through very quickly. Emilia says, I wish I had your background. I feel like a lack of technical expertise puts me at a significant disadvantage. I don't know.
Not really. I mean, not really. No, just if you have a curious mind, like I said, and you want to know how things work, you can naturally grasp these things. So don't let that ever put you down in any way.
And then Mohammed asks, can you explain, so this is with regards to the section where you were talking about your business analysis stage. Can you please explain more about the type of mentoring and training you were giving to your colleagues, i.e. is it technical, soft skill, or other?
So the type of mentoring that I would normally give is more on the business side of things, because well, a lot of so we had technical, there were technical people that I mentored, and then there were also business analysts. So from the technical perspective, I always taught my developers to think more like the customer and to understand what business problem are you solving. And if you have a holistic understanding of business, then you'll be able to write or develop your code better. So my mentorship was always around the business side and the customer centricity. And that was a training that I gave my the technical staff. In terms of business analysts, I would really assist them with things like modeling and how best to model your business, and also giving business analysts more of the big picture thinking. I didn't find, I felt that a lot of the BAs always kind of focus on specific features, and I always try to move them away from just feature thinking, but more into a bigger understanding of things, and that really improved how they were as business handlers. So that was a type of coaching that I gave.
Thank you. Mohammed also asks, is there a difference between business architect role and the enterprise architect, or are they the same?
Okay, so yeah, so business architecture, really, if you remove IT, that's what business architecture is about. So business architecture focuses on business concepts and modeling a business in terms of its people and structure and even information concepts. Technology then comes in, which actually supports all of that. So when you look at a business is not necessarily thinking technology at all. It's thinking about, how do I create value for my customers? What kind of benefits do I want to actually give the customer? And business architecture focuses on that side of things. Then you have your technical side, your technical architects and your data architects that actually come in to support your business. Your business architecture drives your other technology domains. Enterprise architecture, it touches on all of the domains, but in reality, if you look at enterprise architects, they are very much technically oriented. They mostly comprise of your software architects, your application architects, very much technical and IT-centric, whereas your business architects focus on business structures, business models, operating models. And a lot of companies don't have business architects and just completely rely on enterprise architects. But from what I've actually heard in most businesses is that enterprise architecture is very much more technically oriented, although it actually comprises of all 4 domains, which is business, data, applications, and technology. I do find that enterprise architects tend to focus more on the technological side and very little on the business side. So that is why it's good to always have business architects working together with enterprise architects to drive technology through business architecture.
Thanks, Lucille. That cleared it up for me as well. Thank you. Then we have another question. Can I use the same path to be a SAP business architect?
A SAP business, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think if you are lucky enough to have more exposure to SAP, that would be great, because SAP is an ERP system. So definitely this part would work for you, absolutely.
Great, thank you. Maggie says, thank you, Lucille. If one is looking at just complementing or building on business knowledge, which one would you recommend to start with first, Togaf or CBA or BizBock?
I would recommend a CBA. Yeah, the Certified Business Architect, because it specializes in business architecture. Togaf will give you the understanding of enterprise architecture. It will touch on all 4 domains. But if you really want to focus on the business side, I would say a Certified Business Architect is the way to go. And I believe that the Open Group also has a business architecture standard called the Open Business Architecture Standard, the OBA. So that might be worth looking into as well. But right now, I know the Business Architecture Guild is the organization that owns the CBA qualification, and I would certainly recommend going for that.
Great, thank you. Then business models are intertwined to revenue model or revenue streams. How do you ensure that when changing these models, you're not impacting on the revenue model streams negatively?
Yeah, I think there, you would have to work with your chief financial officer and really go about looking at the pros and cons, looking at the financial impacts that it's going to have. So when you're coming up with new business modules, you're going to have to look at the revenue streams that is going to be impacted with it. And it's almost like a catch-22 here. So it is quite a difficult one. I wouldn't say there's a definite answer to that. But I think if you're going to work with your financial officers, your chief executives, just being able to understand the new value that's going to come out of the new modules and try to be able to quantify that. Although I must admit that is a bit of a catch-22 there. But yeah, I'm sure it can be done.
Thanks, Lucille. I'm just trying to get to the next question very quickly. Yeah, career change can really make it difficult to find ground. How do you make sure that the transition is of great nature and seamless?
Well, I think that when you're choosing something that you are naturally doing, it's a habit of yours, then it doesn't really seem very disruptive and it can be very seamless. For me, moving from business analyst to business architect, as a kid, I've naturally been thinking big picture. So if you continuously find yourself acting in a certain way, with a certain habit that you perform, then the transition will generally be seamless. So always go for something that excites you and that you love.
Thank you. Then there's a question here that says, how is product owner different than business architect?
So product owners would be people that have more direction in terms of the product and the value proposition that it actually wants to offer business customers. The architecture is showing product owners how exactly to deliver on that value proposition. So a product owner, well, even a product manager, sometimes these roles overlap, they would actually come up with, this is a new feature that I would want to offer customers, and this is, or shall I say, the new type of value that I want to offer a customer. But an architect would be able to tell you, okay, so that's the sort of feature or capability you want to now offer, but how exactly am I going to do this? Architects would be able to tell you the processes, people, and technology that it's going to take to work together to be able to deliver that value proposition to the customer. So that's the difference between product owners and architects. Product owners will come up with the vision and what value they want to deliver to a customer by using that product. And an architect will tell you, okay, this is how you actually go about doing that. I hope that is clear.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, that's really good. Thank you. Okay. Next one from Bronwyn. To give us some context, can you please give us an example or two of something or a solution that you have been involved in recommending and then implementing at a business?
Is that relating to architecture, business architect? Oh, okay. Well, right now, okay, just to answer, I'll take it from an architecture perspective. Right now, I'm actually working with a company to promote the use of business architecture in supporting product management. And I want to be able to actually show stakeholders how using architecture can give all stakeholders a common understanding of business and how architecture can support product management. So I'm actually using architecture to to represent the product by using the value stream mapping and capabilities to understand what capabilities it's lacking and where new features can actually be delivered by introducing new capabilities. So that is what I'm actually using business architecture for at the moment. And I'm actually in the process of making that happen as an architect, is using the business architecture and product management disciplines and looking at how architecture can actually help develop and sort of support each discipline.
Bronwyn, did that answer your question? I think Bronwyn's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, next question. How does CDMP fit into your profile? How are you using it as a business architect?
Yeah, so CDMP is something that I'm going to be pursuing. I haven't obtained that, but your CDMP is your Certified Data Management Professional. And I believe that information and business work hand in hand. Information is the lifeblood of business. And you need to understand, I mean, right now, big data, businesses are having more issues with how they are handling data, privacy, the quality of data, and security of data, and even how to structure data. So for me, business architecture and data management, they kind of go hand in hand. And I believe that pursuing a certified data management professional eventually is going to really give me a better grasp on how to model information at a much more granular level, and it will really complement business architecture.
Thank you. Question from Marcus. Hi, Marcus. What are your recommended first steps to get into business architecture?
Oh, like I've said, do not tell anyone I want to do business architecture. I always say, find a problem in your organization that business architecture can actually address. So find, like, for example, when I looked at my organization, I looked at the silo thinking, I saw overlapping features, redundancy, and I thought that if only we knew the strategic direction of the company that we're developing these features for, if we had that broad level view, we would make better decisions in being able to develop features. So my recommendation is first find a problem area in your business that architecture can resolve and create the value immediately. Draw up diagrams and recommend solutions and show it to your stakeholders. And that's how you can actually move into a business architect role. First, look for the value, and then, of course, that would you would move into that path.
I think showing the value in pretty much everything is actually vital. Yeah. Okay, we're coming down to the last 4 or 5 questions, Lucille. First one, could you recommend books to developing strategies?
Yes, there's a really good book called Red Teaming, which is thinking, it's called Red Teaming, I can't remember the author, but it's Red Teaming, something to do with thinking like the enemy. And it shows you how a group of people were actually brought together to poke holes in the organization's strategy. So I think that book, it has a lot of connotations with the military and strategy used there. So I think, yeah, that is a great book to use. There's also strategic management in Southern Africa. That would be a great book, especially for people wanting to develop strategies in our country. So yeah, those are 2 of the books that I could think of. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, this is sort of okay. How do you enter the consultancy field?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I have been consulting for a while, but right now I am self-employed and I've partnered with a consulting company. and that was just by applying. So yeah, I've actually applied for a role, and I'm now partnering with that company to provide consultancy. But yeah, I think business analysts are naturally
consulting all the time, pretty much.
Consulting, yeah, it's generally you can either work for a consulting company like the likes of
Amelia's got another question here. How would you approach the situation where the company you just joined doesn't believe BA needs the bigger picture because they feel the analysis for the projects or features you're assigned will follow the same approach?
Well, it also depends, you know, with the type of stakeholders you're dealing with. If they don't feel that having the bigger picture adds any benefit to them, you could probably just go ahead and show them that benefit, or otherwise don't spend too much time. You know, you could always look for a company that values that, you know.
It's back to showing the value and how much benefit there is in having the bigger picture, I guess. Okay, can you separate the system analyst to business architecture roles?
Systems analysts, I would say, is very much, I mean, from my perspective, I've worked a lot with doing technical designs. So it is more about like designing database structures, and yeah, at a very technical level, doing a lot of DB designs and functions and procedures, coming up with technical solutions of how to implement business functionality. But a business architect, like I've said, actually removes the technology component. It's strictly to do with the structure of a business.
Great, thank you. And this is the last one. How can smaller enterprises, SMMEs, or non-profit organizations leverage business architecture skills?
Yeah, so a lot of people think that, you know, business architecture is all about big companies wanting to transform or do mergers and acquisitions, but small businesses can use it too. And I've seen a lot of businesses that actually want to be able to come up with their business models. And that's where business architecture can play a huge role. And even startups that are wanting to scale, I find startup businesses, because they want to get things done, everything is very haphazard, Wild West, and they've got no time to actually document anything or model the business. But when they want to scale, now they realize, you know, they actually need to be able to understand what it is, what capabilities do we currently have, and how can we improve our business to be able to now take that and expand it into other countries. They want to get the business right before they start exploring new avenues. So business architecture can really come in and give organizations a good view of their structure and how they can actually scale up from even being a startup business.
Fantastic, thank you so much, Lucille. I don't know if you've had a chance to look in the chat, but there's been a bunch of feedback on an awesome presentation. So thank you so much, Lucille. The detail that you gave was fantastic. There's a new message that's just come through. Yeah, it was a great webinar. Thank you very much, Lucille. And thank you everybody for attending. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Sure. Thanks so much, guys. And yeah, if you need anything, I am on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me and I can share you yeah, much more than I've actually done in this webinar. So yeah, looking to meet you guys after this. Have a lovely.
Thank you, Lucille. You too. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Bye.
Bye.